Hang on 1 second, guys. All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. As all of you know, on Wednesday night, we received word from the Trump administration that they approved our request for a major disaster declaration and would be providing individual assistance in McDowell, Mercer, Mingo, and Wyoming counties. In addition to that individual assistance, we also know that they've made available to us the hazard mitigation program, which also provides other longer-term opportunities for the state to begin recovery. I want to start out by saying I am very grateful to President Trump, to Secretary Noem, and the rest of the Trump administration, who we've worked very closely with this whole time, for them stepping up and helping. I want to thank our federal delegation for all the work that they're doing. They sent an important supportive letter, so I appreciate the work of our senators and our House members. When times are challenging in West Virginia, people come together, we're unified, we get big things done. Now, this is the first step in the recovery process, and I think we need to think about it in two phases. We have disaster response and we have recovery. Our disaster response was aggressive and proactive. One of the issues that's come up, the questions that come up is, how are things different than other states? I'm here to tell you that we went and aggressively put people on the ground. We immediately convened our emergency management team, and then we were able to start coordinating with our first responders, local emergency folks in the counties. We actually have mutual aid agreements with these counties that help facilitate the working relationship. So West Virginia was in a position to act quickly. That compares to maybe there could be other states that apply for an emergency assistance because the feds had to come in and do some of the very work we were doing that we're ready to do. And there's some caps on that. So big differences in some of the type of programs, and I'm going to address any questions that come, but I want to thank our team. These guys worked around the clock, and it's not done yet. This is just the beginning of a multi-step process. You have response and then recovery. We're in the recovery mode now. We're going to continue to support those who are in need. The truth is that these processes take some time. I think if you go back in history, you know that, but we're not going to stop until the job is done. I know that there are a lot of West Virginians that they're still hurting. I now went down again yesterday to meet with a number of citizens in McDowell County, and I also stopped off in Wyoming County to see the situation on the ground, learn what's happening. And let me tell you, so many people are doing so many incredible things for their neighbors. I was personally very, very touched when I was in Wyoming County to see these kids that were working to put meals together. And then they're going out into the hollers, they're going out to get people the food they need, the water they need, the help they need to make sure that they're able to take care of themselves. I can tell you that the state response is still ongoing. The National Guard is continuing to work together with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Health, DEP, and others throughout state government. Currently, the National Guard has 159 personnel activated, with 108 deployed in Logan, McDowell, Mercer, Mingo, Wayne, and Wyoming counties. As of yesterday, the loader dump teams from the National Guard, they've removed over 900 tons of debris from the roadways and the waterways. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but it bears repeating. All of this is a process that when you're in the middle of a disaster state, the water is there, you can't immediately begin cleaning up because you need the water levels to recede. I think people know that and appreciate that. Then as the water begins to recede, you have the trucks and the work to come to clear the debris. I know that when I went down to McDowell the first time, I saw firsthand that there was a lot of cleaning of the debris so that the roadways could be cleared so that the linemen and the other officials could get through and provide help. So that's certainly important. Now there's a lot of work on the cleanup aspect of it. And there's obviously a lot of debris that's going to need to be removed in the days, weeks, and months ahead. I do want to remind folks that for the National Guard to remove any of this debris, it must be brought to the street or put to the curb. So folks can let people know, spread that around. You can't just leave it outside your front door. It's got to go to the street and to the curb to make sure that it's easy for them to bring it out. Also want to report that the Department of Health is operating a mobile medical unit, and they're staffed with volunteers and some of the staff from Welch Community Hospital. Moving on to FEMA assistance, I want to talk a little bit about the individual assistance that's being activated by FEMA. It's my understanding that FEMA is now on the ground in a number of the counties today. The FEMA individual assistance is an important program for many of the citizens affected by the flood. It's designed to assist residents in the designated counties who receive damage to their homes or property. It can also provide resources for temporary housing, for home repairs, or other essential needs to help our communities recover. One thing that happened on the ground yesterday is immediately when I was talking to the folks in Mingo, they were asking questions and said, look, we have a lot of people that were in homes and that they were flooded. The water came down, but people were worried about black water. They were worried about mold, and questions came up about dehumidifiers. And so immediately by being on the ground, we called our team and we were able to learn that the dehumidifiers could also get covered in this type of process. That's a good thing. We want to let people know about that because when we get a question, we respond immediately. That's why I'm proud to tell you that as of this morning, we do not have any outstanding need requests that we're not already working on to address. So there's some that are in process, of course, but we're all over this. That's what we do. We're Team West Virginia, and we come together and we make sure we identify problems early, we get on top of them, and then we act. In the upcoming days, we expect that FEMA is going to be having disaster recovery centers in the affected areas for in-person support and application process. And very importantly, I'd like to give folks information. If we can get this out broadly, I'd be grateful because if the citizens know how to apply and what to do, that's going to make it a little bit easy. But before you apply, we're going to ask you, take photos of your house. Show your damage. Show them some of the belongings. Develop that record. That's part of the process overall when you're submitting it. I remember one of the days, because we got on it immediately to get that application in really, really fast, but we had snow one day, and so the drones, have trouble taking pictures in the snow. We want to make sure that we're doing everything possible, but that also means that individuals take those pictures, get ready, so when you meet with the FEMA recovery, you can get the help you need. If you want to apply online, you want to go to disasterassistance.gov. Disasterassistance.gov, and that's going to make it easier for you to communicate with FEMA. With a disasterassistance.gov account, you can upload documents and check the status of your application from anywhere if you have an internet connection. If you want to apply through the FEMA app, you can find a link to download the app on FEMA's website, and I think people should avail themselves of that. You can also call the FEMA helpline at 1-800-621-3362. You can apply for assistance in person, and you'll be able to get some of the help that you need. One of the things that also happens through this process is after you submit it, there are individuals from FEMA that verify the damage, and they may do through on-site inspection or remote inspection. So that's part of the process. The inspector needs to review the damage in order to determine whether there'll be approval or not. So FEMA is on the ground. We're working closely with them. We've been working with them since day one. As individuals, when you apply, FEMA will ultimately send you a decision letter explaining the type of assistance that you're going to receive, and you should be looking out for that. As we continue this process to help our neighbors recover, I want to remind every West Virginian that we have your back. And I know that there'll be some who say, well, we have this for 4 counties. What's going on in the other counties? This is a process. I'm very deeply grateful for the speedy responses and the work that's been done by everyone on our team and within the Trump administration. I'm told that this has been historically a very fast process compared to other situations. In fact, I know that when we first met and we started to collect the information, that happened beginning day one so we could be ready and armed. And I want people to reflect the differences between the states. It's important that we tell people exactly what's happening. I also want to say I'm very grateful for the Guard. General Seward is not here today, but we have General Cato, and General Seward and his team and General Cato have been doing incredible work. And I was down there yesterday. You should see the reaction that people have to the Guard, but also to all the local officials. I was able to drive around and see a lot of the affected areas. One area in particular where 600 people were still without water. There were both efforts to get the citizens the water they need through the great volunteer help, but also on the ground we had folks from the National Guard, and then we had folks from Department of Highways. I was literally watching because some of the parts of the road had fell down into the river, and so they were busy trying to construct that. They told me that was going to be a couple-day process, but you could see all of that by being on the ground when we were driving and trying to learn more what was occurring. The Armory, people are taking really good care of people. Please continue to help. Look out for your neighbors in need. But I can't emphasize enough. We're grateful for all of the work that's been done inside the state and out, and it's going to continue to happen. This is a long-term process, and it doesn't just end because we have 4 counties. There will be more as time goes on, more decisions that get made. I think there'll be positive decisions, but I'd like to get the quick decisions that affect the people that are most impacted right away, and then keep coming back and back. It's a good working relationship that we have. So we're going to continue to update folks. I just urge people to look at all of the FEMA information to get the help that you need, and then we'll keep coordinating with local, state, and federal officials to put Team West Virginia first. I'll now take questions.
Sort of unrelated to this, but the legislative session's going on. I know obviously comm repeal is a big priority for your administration. I know the House committee that had that voted that down 12-13, but of course there's still a Senate bill. The session's still young. There's certainly other opportunities for that to get pushed. So what are you and your team doing moving forward now to try to get more lawmakers to kind of see what the benefits of comm repeal would be?
Well, a couple things. Thank you, Stephen, for asking that question. Everything's a process, right? We have a 60-day process. So I've always interested. I think you, Stephen, you write about this. People declare things dead very early when things are not dead. I will say this. I'm a big believer that we need to lower the outrageously high prices of healthcare. Let's start with this. I want to protect citizens that are in need, and I want there to be a viable private healthcare marketplace. Right now, we're going in a direction where that's not happening. That's going to change. And so we're going to continue to push for policies that make a difference, that put the people first, not the special interest. That's what we're working on. So I do think you're going to see more activity in the upcoming days and weeks ahead. Obviously, the House has one set of issues, and we respect that people have different opinions, but I do believe that we need competition, and we're going to be advancing it through different means. So we've had some good conversations with different people in the legislature. We think that there's a lot of support for various types of additional competition, whether everything looks the exact same way. That's the nature of the process, right? That you have things that maybe you ask for things and you get 90% of it. Let's not confuse perfect with the really good. And so we're looking at really good policies. It may not be everything that is perfect, but we're going to make meaningful progress. I think you're going to begin to see that in the next 2 weeks. So this is far from over. We're in a position to make good changes that put our citizens first and make sure that competition occurs and that we have lower prices, and we don't have what we have now, higher prices and the worst healthcare outcomes. Higher prices and the worst healthcare outcomes. We should all be focusing on those terrible healthcare outcomes to make progress, because it sickens me to be 50 and we are going to move the needle.
Quick follow-up on that,
Yeah.
too. Would you be open to maybe a more limited form or even a pilot project? There's been talk for years now of a pilot project, say the Eastern Panhandle, obviously where you've got a growing population, but where maybe the options are limited or you're forced to go across the border to Virginia or Maryland. Is that something that's on the table?
Well, I think what would be on the table would be, I want to have as much competition as I can possibly get, because it benefits our citizens. The more reforms we have, the lower the prices for our consumers. That's a great thing. So I'm going to push to fight for our consumers to lower healthcare costs. So, I recognize that everyone doesn't share that. I do think we have a majority, though, in the House and the Senate who do share that. So that's why we'll be looking at not only CON, but a lot of different issues which will drive that competition that'll be very helpful. We have different tools available to us within the executive branch that we can look at as well. We'll do everything the right way, but I'm going to push for the people. So, obviously, if there are roadblocks for the people, there may be short-term roadblocks, right? That there are people that don't see that competition or lower prices the same way that I do. Well, short-term, people might win the day. Long-term, I think lower prices will be very appealing to the West Virginia public. Better healthcare outcomes, more competition. That's what this is all about.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Chris Millette from
Yeah.
the Gazette.
Welcome. This is your first press conference.
I don't have the opportunity to get here too often, but I did today, so thank you.
Yeah.
Two questions, unrelated, both related to the legislature.
Yeah.
House Bill 2008, which I believe you support.
Can you help me when you hear the numbers? Tell me the substance.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
I focus on substance.
Would remove future state employees from the civil service.
Oh, yeah.
Future state employees from the Division of Economic Development, from the civil service system and its grievance procedures specifically. Doesn't the civil service system protect state workers against political hires and promote?
No. So this is, I'm very glad you asked this question. West Virginians stand for a meritocracy. We want to have the best possible people in these jobs. Over the last few years, as I've watched a lot of what's happened around the country, I know that, I see what happens. Sometimes you have a lot of good state workers, by the way, and I've had a chance to get to know many different people since I became governor. But I will tell you that when there are processes that make it more difficult to have efficiency and accountability and quality, you want to change those. I want to pick the best people for the best jobs and not be worried about if you're in slot A13, but the system says you can only go to A14, where there's some limits on what you can do. That's not going to be successful. I'm going to give you a specific example. I know when I look at what is going on in the Department of Highways and Transportation, they have a big shortage of engineers. You probably have heard that when you talk to people. It's very difficult for us to attract all the engineers because of some of the problems within the system. I want to change all that. I want it based on merit. And there are a lot of people, because they're not interested in reform, they're interested in the status quo of the way things have been run for many, many years. This is the way we've always done things. We're going to focus on quality. We're going to focus on merit. The people who are best capable to do the job. That's what this is all about. But it's not disruptive, to the people. If you're in your current job, you can stay in your current job, and because we're sensitive. We've drafted this away that this would get upheld in court like that. And that's why we did it, right? But we need to have reforms. We will have a meritocracy. We will focus on hiring on the basis of merits, and this is just the beginning of that effort.
Just to follow on that,
Yeah.
just address, are you concerned about an increased chance of political hires?
No.
Or
Well, look, I serve as the governor, and I'm very fortunate that the voters asked me to serve as the chief executive of the state. The chief executive is asked to manage all the departments and the agencies, including all the employees. I want to pick the best people for all those jobs. But as I've mentioned to people, I want to bring accountability, efficiency, and quality to bear. We talked about the budget. By the way, I'm very pleased with how things have been going along. We're making a lot of progress, building a lot of good relationships. One thing that people see is that there were some structural problems with the way things were handled in the past, things that we inherited. We're working to fix those. But the other piece, what I've mentioned, is when you're trying to get your arms around these structural problems, right? There are program changes that have to be made, but you have to also make government more efficient, and that's part of the reason for not only consolidations. It means that we're going to have our chief financial officer and myself go through all the departments to wring efficiencies into the system. And having accountability makes that even easier. So we're going to be very aggressive and proactive, and we're going to fairly evaluate things, but people should be hired on the basis of merit. This is how the private sector works. I want it to work more like a business. I want it to be more efficient, and I'm very pleased with the reaction so far. One more question for you. I want to give your other colleagues a set. Well, actually, go ahead.
If that's okay?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
On the con vote, related to just political process, Scott Hecker, Republican from Wood County delegate, said on Outside the Echo Chamber the other day, he's a little critical of your office's political process. And I'd like just to read a comment. He said, we got off to a bad start. The governor was trying to force people to vote his way. By the way, Delegate Hecker voted against the con in the committee meeting, and he just said pulling people out of committees to get them to change their vote. Just wondering, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with him in any way, just is there anything about your office's political process that...
No. Here's the thing. There are always going to be outliers, right, who don't speak for their districts, or they may be opposed to President Trump or other things. They're not part of the team. I get that. So I'm not going to worry about them. We're going to advance an agenda, and we're going to do it working with the vast majority of the legislature that supports good changes. We know that there could be sometimes disagreement on issues. I accept that. I work with people that you disagree with all the time. Some people, they'll approach it a little differently. We're not going to get distracted by people. People like that don't have a role in the process, right? Because what you do is you make sure you work with the people who want to have the best policies for West Virginia. I want West Virginia to see increases in its standard of living. I want advanced educational attainment. I want to have lower healthcare prices for our consumers. I want to work with anyone who wants to make that happen. So everyone is welcome to work on those issues. And we're not going to get into any personal things. We haven't called anyone out, right? Because it's not, look, that's a deep, deep minority. They don't speak for the caucus. I've been speaking with the caucus and House and the Senate. I think the vast majority of people, I'm very hopeful. They want to do big, big things. Through the 60-day process, you learn who wants to really do big things and who's in it for different reasons. But we're not going to ever get distracted. Our agenda is moving along the right way. I feel good about it. And I think it's going to be a very productive 2025. I think when you look, not just the end of the session, but what we're going to do throughout the year on big issues, a lot of the things we laid out in the State of the State, I'm very hopeful, and that the majority of the House and the Senate supports that. Oh, go ahead. You raise your hand first, sir.
Yes, Jack Walker, West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Thank you for having us here. I know the state legislature is currently considering a vaccine exemption bill for schools that is actually broader than one that you previously outlined. I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that, and specifically the changes to, or the absence of a mandated reporting, like schools have to report.
You stopped along the way, and I didn't understand what you were saying. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so just your thoughts on the broadened version of a vaccine exemption bill, and the students not being required, or schools potentially not being required to report their number.
Listen, I think this is a good example, part of the process, right? You have 60 days. You have a body that moves something through. In life, I don't know about you guys, but I don't get everything that I want. You're friends with people. You get married. I've been married for a long time. You don't agree on every issue, right? So there could be some differences of opinion, but you look for something that's good for people, right? And so as this process goes through, we'll be looking at that. And I want to tell you, the reason why we took action early is that West Virginia was an outlier, that they didn't have an exception for religious liberty. That mattered tremendously. because I believe that that's protected under our First Amendment and that can't be overridden. I care for people who have deeply held religious beliefs, and that's why I took action. And I recognize that there are going to be a lot of different twists and turns along the way. I'm sure that there'll be different opinions in the House and other people, and then we'll go through the process and evaluate it and work well with people. But I commend folks that are advancing bills, and we'll sort things out, right? It's a process. The House, the Senate, the governor, we're all involved in the process. So I'm not concerned about things. We're going to keep advancing them, but I just can articulate what was motivating me, which is to provide a religious exemption because people have religious beliefs and that needs to be respected. And then we'll talk about other issues as they arise.
Like the Journal 13 News, going back to the topic of FEMA assistance, you said it's a long process. There's
Yeah.
no outstanding request for this and that. The National Guard is in a lot of these counties who haven't gotten individual assistance yet helping clean up. Are there any plans to provide funding to more of the local government level, whether it be county commission, municipalities, or towns to help with that cleanup?
So there are a couple different things that are going on. So on Wednesday night, we received the individual assistance. That's for the 4 counties. I know that there are other counties that are currently under review right now, and they go through like you would anything, one county at a time. And I think what they did is try to go to the counties that they thought, and most people thought were the hardest hit by the flood. So then there's a separate process with the public assistance piece, which addresses the municipalities and the counties, and they're going through that right now. And obviously, as a state, we're going to be looking more broadly at different issues on both response and recovery over the long run. So I think it's a little premature to say exactly what would happen. I want to make sure that we're always thoughtful, but I will tell all the West Virginians who are hurting right now, we've got your back. We're working really hard. I've been down on the ground. I have to tell you, of the Guard, you guys have been doing an unbelievable work. So I'm deeply grateful for everything happening, and I think you'll keep hearing more as time goes on. Any final questions that you have? Well, I want to thank you all for coming. A lot more big things coming over the next week or two, and I think these are going to be big things that are going to help move the needle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.